The question of what people emotionally and spiritually want and need is a question that has left philosophers plagued since the beginning of their craft. You see, it's interesting. Different people might want different things. They might want a sense of love, they might want a sense of accomplishment, they might want to feel respected, or they might want to feel valued. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Different people might want different things whenever it comes to their ultimate sense of happiness. So the question is there a universal set of things that everyone wants? To be an effective leader in today's world, it almost seems that these people have to have a greater sense of what people need from their leaders, especially if they're going to follow effectively and well. And the question then becomes, what are those things that those people need? If you want to be an effective leader, how do you accomplish that in the best way possible? James C. Hunter, besides having arguably one of the best mustaches in history, also wrote one of the greatest books on leadership you'll ever find, surprisingly to some people, called The Servant. You see, when most people think of leaders, they think of authoritative and big power guys who stand up in front of everybody and they're willing to take charge. But James C. Hunter has a very, very different philosophy on what good and solid leadership should look like. Hunter recognizes that having power and authority over people doesn't necessarily make you a great leader. Instead, some of the greatest leaders of all time have gotten there through being willing to build relationships with the people around them, being willing to serve those around them, being willing to make sacrifices for the people around them, and being willing to show love to those that they lead. One of my favorite parts of this book happens right at the very beginning. And it's right in that first chapter where Hunter talks about being with a group of people and they're trying to come up with what are some of the attributes of the great leaders they've seen throughout their life. And without fail, a lot of the people in those groups came up with the same or similar phrasing of words or phrases that they would use to describe a great leader. Whenever they compiled their top 10 words, their top 10 phrases, it really boiled down to this. They wanted someone who was honest and trustworthy. They wanted somebody who was committed and caring. They wanted someone who was just a good role model. They also wanted somebody who held people accountable, but at the same time, they wanted someone who would treat people with respect. They wanted a person who gave people encouragement. They wanted a person who was positive and had an enthusiastic attitude. And finally, they wanted someone who appreciated people. You see, I feel like none of this is too much to ask out of the leaders that we currently have in front of us. And it really feels quite simple whenever you boil it down to just 10 principles that people should be able to live by, especially whenever they lead other people. My absolute favorite part of this book comes in chapter 4, when Hunter takes an all too common word and gives it a new definition entirely. Hunter is talking about love, a word that today is way too thrown around as just a simple noun. People equate it today as a feeling, an emotion that someone feels, perhaps at times unceremonious, and it's just something that comes up. It's just simply a balance of chemicals within the brain. While these people might be in part correct about that, there's also a much different definition of love that Hunter brings to the table. Hunter is talking about a kind of love that is far deeper and far, far greater. Hunter, throughout his books, talks about many, many great leaders. But perhaps one sticks out above all the rest. You see, when Hunter talks about Jesus, it takes on another level of love. When he talks about Jesus, we immediately equate that love to the unconditional love that Jesus held for us. I think people long to be loved unconditionally. People long to be cared for and, well, valued. And what part of that is not love? You see, if we can show this love to the people around us, imagine what a different world we'd be living in. I think one of the greatest stories about Jesus and the love that he showed for us and the love that he asked us to show to others comes right out of Mark 12. And one of the scribes came up and heard them disputing with one another. And seeing that he answered them well, asked him, "What commandment is most important of all?" Jesus answered, "The most important is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength." The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. And the scribe said to him, "You are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and there is no other besides him. And to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is much more than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices." And when Jesus saw that he answered wisely, he said to him, "You are not far from the kingdom of God." And after that, no one dared ask him any other questions. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? The two greatest commandments, to love the Lord our God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Yet somehow we struggle with it so hard all the time. Imagine what a different world we would live in if we were able to abide by these simple commandments. We are currently facing a world that's more divided, more hostile, and perhaps more scared than any other generation we've seen before. But somehow we're also living in one of the most connected generations we've ever seen. So the question then becomes, how do we take Jesus' greatest commandment and apply it to the world that we live in today? Well, I don't think it's any secret that our neighbor isn't necessarily the person that lives next to us. You see, it's people all over the world. Jesus never intended for this to just mean the people directly next to us. He always meant for this to be something far greater reaching and far better for the world around us. It's to people all across the world. Jesus says there is no commandment greater than this: to share the love that we have for ourselves with the people around us. I challenge anyone who watches this video to recognize that the need for leaders who are willing to go above and beyond in this form of leadership is very pressing. We need leaders in today's day and age that are willing to build relationships, that are willing to be a servant, that are willing to sacrifice, and perhaps greater than all of these, that are willing to love the people around them. People who are willing to take love beyond the emotion. People who are willing to take love to the next level. People who are willing to build those relationships and love the people around them unconditionally. Love the people around you the way you love yourself, no matter where they are, what they've been through, what they've done. Love your neighbor.